Hi everyone, my name is Junon. I have a health science background and I'm the author of the book Truth Empathy, How to Find Your Soulmate. And I'll put a link to the book below. This video is about the romantic compatibility between ENFJs and INTPs. I think most people have asked themselves the question at some point, who's the best match with another person based on certain characteristics? And I think that MBTI personality types can be a good starting point. So let's look at what these two personality types have in common. Obviously, they're both intuitive. So in other words, when they look at the world and they're gathering data, it is more of a download that they're receiving instead of going step by step and gathering information so that they can decide what to do in terms of compared to, let's say, sensors who need, in other words, gathering information using their five senses to be able to know what will be the future trend or making better decisions. So if we look at where the intuitive function is located for the ENFJs, it is the second function. So they have introvert intuition as in the second place. Whereas when it comes to the INTPs, they have extroverted intuition as their second function. So the ENFJ is more intuitive in terms of having slow brainwaves compared to the INTP, and that may make a difference in terms of how they are going to interact. When it comes to being an introvert extrovert, is that interesting enough is that although the ENFJ is considered an extrovert, because this personality type is an intuitive, it has higher energy than most other personality types, so they will probably need time alone or with a few close friends and family to get recharged. And obviously the INTP, being an introvert and being intuitive, also will spend most of the time alone or with a few close friends or family members to recharge. The pairing of the ENFJ and the INTP will come across a number of challenges. The first one is that the ENFJ is a feeler, whereas the INTP is a thinker. So in other words, when they make decisions, they don't put the emphasis on the same information. So in other words, the ENFJ has extroverted feeling as its first function. So what they actually want is to bond with others. They want harmony. For them, they're willing to sacrifice logic or the truth just to get along with others. By contrast, the INTP uses more logic to make decisions because it has introverted thinking as its first function. So whenever they are trying to make a decision, they're looking at whether whatever information that they're gathering, does it have internal logic? So things have to make sense. So in other words, they're willing to sacrifice harmony for be able to have a logical system, and they're not the type of people who want to control others, but it has to make sense in their minds. So because of the fact that ENFJ has introvert thinking as its fourth function, it means that logic is not something they're really good at. Even, let's say, if they interact with other feelers, other feelers will sense that the ENFJ is really not very logical. While the ENFJ will look at the INTP and think that they are too logical and cold-hearted, the INTP will look at the ENFJ and think that, okay, you're too emotional, you need to make sense, things have to be logical before you decide to, maybe on this course of action versus another. So another area where they're going to have issues is that the ENFJ is usually very much into spirituality because the theme of their life is, as an intuitive feeler, as spirituality and meaning, whereas the INTP, being an intuitive thinker, the theme of their lives is power and knowledge. So they're not coming from the same sort of like perspective. So what happens is that the INTP wants often sort of facts, logic, to be able to make up their minds. Although obviously they are intuitives, but these are people who really believe in science, the scientific method, and whenever you're talking to them, you have to bring enough information to convince them whether or not something is true or not. By contrast, the ENFJ is not like that, being very intuitive and very much a feeler. They don't need that information to either believe in a higher power or believe in their spiritual sort of like principles. So you'll see that there's going to be an issue on that level, and the INTP, being rather outspoken, might hurt the ENFJ's feelings, because the INTP looks at, let's say, dispute or arguments as like of play. For them, it's a hobby to have debates. Whereas the ENFJ is not really fond of that. First of all, they're not really good with logic, because when you're arguing with someone or you're debating, you have to make sure that you have all your facts checked and everything is logical, and that is not their area of strength, because they have introverted thinking as their fourth function. Whereas the INTP having introverted thinking as their first function, this is their strength compared to other personality types. So that may be an area where they won't get along. The other point also, because of the fact that if you look at their brainwave dominance, the ENFJ is very intuitive. In other words, the ENFJ is just less intuitive than the INFJ. So you'll see that they'll have a slow alpha brain dominance, so it's around 7 cycles per second. By contrast, the INTP, having extroverted intuition as its second function, has an alpha brain dominance. So interesting enough, the INTP is less intuitive than the ENFJ, and that also means that they not look at the world the same way. So the combination of one being a feeler and being very intuitive, whereas the other one being a thinker and being less intuitive, that also means that they're not looking at the world the same way. They're not processing the information in the same pace. So in other words, I would say that the combination of these two, it's not going to be something comfortable. If you put this pairing together, most likely the ENFJ will make most of the compromise with, and the INTP might not even recognize it or understand it. So actually, I'll say that most INTPs feel that they're not really good when it comes to personal relationships. They're struggling with that, and they might feel insecure about that. But at the same time, because the ENFJ is making most of the compromises, they might not realize how they're not really connecting. To summarize, this is a poor pairing because of the fact that although both are intuitives, the ENFJ and the INTP have a lot of hurdles to go through if they were to want to make it work. First of all, one is a feeler, the other one is a thinker, one is very logical, the other one isn't. One is very much focused on relationships because they have extroverted feeling as their first function as the ENFJs, whereas the INTP has introvert thinking as its first function. So in other words, these are the people who will feel this sort of weird tension going on. They will probably not be able to relax with each other, and what happens is that because the ENFJ wants so much to keep harmony, they will make a lot of sacrifices to stay in a relationship with the INTP. And one of the main issues is that the ENFJ, being an intuitive feeler, has, in terms of the theme of their lives, meaning and spirituality, whereas the INTP is usually an atheist. So that alone will correct a lot of issues because they weren't able to discuss a number of topics together, because when it comes to the ENFJ, they are people oriented. So in other words, they like anything that has to do with the human element, whereas the INTP, being more obviously is a thinker, is more object focused. So in other words, it is about the abstraction of the concrete. So because of that, they won't be able to talk to each other on a regular basis. They're going to be some this like underlying discomfort between the two. So in other words, I would say that it's not a good idea for these two people to date or even have a long-term relationship. And I mean, they could maybe interact. Maybe it has co-workers that say the INTP would be good in terms of anything that has to do with the computers or creating a system, and the ENFJ would be good in terms of people relationships. But in terms of them being a long-term romantic partner, I don't think it's a good idea. So let me know if you agree or disagree with this romantic compatibility analysis between ENFJs and INTPs by commenting below. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, please click on the like button, subscribe to my channel, and we will talk soon.